Hello, hello. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George. What's happening, George? If people aren't happy today, then I don't know what else we can do. This was a good day. This was a really good day for Bitcoin. It was a really good day for the majority of the Bitcoin miners. Some did better than others. It was a really good week. It's so, in my opinion, it's officially on, right? And it started, and I'll tell you, I thought this was a week they were going to mess around with us, but they didn't, right? We had talked several times about maybe the last week of September and maybe the first week of October being bumpy waters. And instead what happened was there was a huge, almost, I don't want to call it a black swan event because it's starting to happen more frequently, but there was a huge outsider event and Bitcoin was the go-to move. It was the place to be. So we had a great week. Yeah. Government shutdown. We'll talk about that. And, you know, it was hard to speculate. There's a lot of ramifications of that. You know, most of us don't feel it in our day to day, unless, of course, you have a government job and you've been sent home. You're on mute. Hold on. No, it's not showing your. Hold on. I know, right. I know something. What do I know?
Thanks, Gigi.
How about now?
Probably most people wouldn't ever say anything that I was on mute. They would probably just let it stay that way.
Let me know if George is now not on mute anymore, because you should be able to hear him according to what my screen is showing. So please do me a favor and let us know in the chat. Can you hear George? George, mic check.
I'll say this. Thank you, Sour Melon Gaming. How do I hide this money for my wife? IREN $100.
You listen, that's an awful lot better problem than you were asking me a year and a half ago, which is
don't tell my wife I lost all this money.
Yeah. Oh, how the tides have turned.
Come on, Waffles. Be nice. You should be happy today. You should have done well this week.
If you didn't do well with this week, then you're probably new to the channel.
Yeah.
That's what I would say about that. So we are at 17 likes. If everybody could do us a huge favor, smash the like button, hit the thumbs up button. Of course, if you're not a subscriber, you can subscribe. It helps us real time. We want to talk about this because this is probably I'm never going to get to them all. This is the most stuff I've had to talk about on a stream. So we got a lot ahead, and most of it's good stuff.
You see, what's so funny is we did the members stream, and we got the gloat on the members stream, and now we get the gloat again, Tom.
Yeah, it's a double win this week. And it was funny because we didn't know, because the member stream was on September 30th. So I was still worried that they were going to mess around with us and try and fake us out for a few days. Now you got to be worried, are they doing the opposite? Are they faking us out? Because listen, all we've heard for the last 45 days is September's going to be awful, but wait for October, right? It's not even October anymore. It's October. I've seen hundreds of thumbnails. October. So we're all pointing in one direction, and it looks like it's starting out that way. So the only thing I would caution that I would put out there is when we all seem to agree on something, they usually go the other way with it. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think the momentum is real. I think there's reasons for it. We're in the middle of it, not the beginning. So I don't think they're going to be able to rug pull us. But that is the only thing that sits in the back of my head. There's a little voice saying, you know, be careful. Everybody's very optimistic right now.
I know we got to get through the month. It could be a bumpy month, but I don't think we'll get back to any of the September lows. So I hope not.
I mean, we got very, very close. You're looking at the 15-minute Bitcoin chart. This line right here is Bitcoin's all-time high. This is the Bitcoin Coinbase chart. So depending on what chart you're looking at, it could be a few dollars different, but on Coinbase, this was the highest trade in the history of Bitcoin at 124,533. And today we got as high as 123,996. So we just almost hit 124,000, where we were inches away. We could blow through that over the weekend, and then we see where we go from there. Because if the one day, we'll look at that later. The one day looks good to me. It looks like there's a lot of room to run, and this is exactly what we talked about. And the other half of what Sour Melon Gaming said is IREN to 100. So that sounded funny a little while ago, except it's over 50 now. So that's only a double. So I hope you're right, Sour Melon Gaming, and I really hope you're right. That's been my personal grand slam home run while I sit around and wait for Marathon to move. And I do believe it will move, but man, that's the lagger in my portfolio big time.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about that one, Tom. Everybody's a little disappointed in Mara's action.
I think they need to come out and do, it's silly, but they need to come out and do what Cleanspark did, which is just start talking about AI. I don't even care if they do anything. Just start talking about it. Yeah, we love AI. We're going to make data centers. It's because here's the thing. We've been following these Bitcoin stocks for years, and there's been many of you that have been with us for years. So thanks for taking the ride with us. All of a sudden, these are dual plays, and I think both sides of these plays. And I was super skeptical about the high performance computing data center AI portion of this puzzle, as a lot of Bitcoin miners were allocating a lot of their resources, and there was no contracts coming in. But guess what? Now there's big contracts coming in, and a lot of these companies still haven't gotten the big contracts. And with the demand that's out there, it feels like, because these were already, it was almost just being in the right place at the right time. These companies were based on the global hash rate of Bitcoin. All the Bitcoin miners were forced to change their business model, vertically integrate, and become energy companies. So as a function of that, they gained an expertise and have a big head start on anybody else that wants into, there's a supply-demand situation going on. Now, is it all overhyped? Maybe, but if it is, we'll see in fact, we'll make that our first poll. What you guys think? I'll bias the poll, but everybody has their own opinion. I think we're early in the AI hype cycle.
IREN will be over 100 before Christmas. That could be nice, Tom.
That would be really, 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 really nice.
Would you get out then or no?
Man, I'm not getting out a week before the end of the year.
No.
But
are you a guy that believes IREN can go to 1,800?
I think that sounds like crazy talk to me.
Okay.
Listen, forget it. If it does, then nothing else. That one investment will be 95% of my portfolio if it does that. But I don't. It depends. It depends on this bubble question. And I'm going to talk a little about IREN in specific and why they're so far ahead of everybody else from a stock price action. There's a reason. It's not a coincidence, even though they actually haven't had the high profile contract. So we'll talk more about IREN. I think the sky's the limit. I think 100, which sounded, remember this stock was at $6 4 months ago. $6. Now it's at 50. So the thought that it would go from 50 to 100 is not a stretch from 100 to 1,000, that becomes a just how crazy does this get? And there's a couple of articles that I have in specific. If the government does a few things and this thing heats up at the right time, then there is no telling where these are going. But then it really is going to be a question, you know, you got to get out, right? If you've got 1,000% returns, 2,000% returns, and you've taken no profit at all, you know, obviously you're free to do whatever you want, but to me, you're not going to sleep at night ever again the rest of your life if you watch all that disappear. So just keep that thought in mind.
I can tell you what, though, if you do sell it, if it does go nuts like that, you do sell it. You should sell it with a covered, covered calls, Tom?
Oh, you want to go covered calls?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe you would ever suggest that after your one experience with covered calls.
I know. My family just came home. They love me at least.
They better. They don't. Just going to go three options. Where are we? And I'm talking about the stock market. Where is the stock market on this AI hype cycle? And it's really AI, high performance computing, and it's really data centers, right? This is all about energy and power. And I think that the market, both the institutional side and the retail side, which ends up chasing, are looking anywhere they can. And one of the good things about these Bitcoin miners, because there was a big article about, you know, there's a bubble coming. We don't, you know, the person didn't want to commit to where we were in the bubble, but they also said, listen, there's going to be a bunch of great companies that come out of that. So there's going to be winners. There's going to be others that have their concept makes no sense and they're going to be total losers. But this group that we're investing in, this is the picks and shovel investment. And this is always the one that wins. I'm sure all experienced this in your life, right? And it's a reference back to the gold rush. It wasn't the people who found the gold. It was the people selling the picks and the shovels who all got rich, because whether anybody found gold or not, the demand for those things went through the roof. And that's what's happening with the demand for what these companies have. So I think this is the picks and shovel play. I think they're going to get a bump on AI. I think they're going to continue to get a bump on Bitcoin, which I think is going much higher. Not financial advice. That's my opinion. We'll see what you guys think on that too. But I've got several articles about some new price targets people are putting out there in the short term, meaning 1 year or less, on Bitcoin. And they're all above where my price target was. So I'm encouraged.
Guys, don't ever beat yourself up for making money. I mean, sometimes you get the nice run and that, like IREN, but dude, if you made money, who cares?
Sour Melon Gaming said, I'm up 1,204% on IREN and haven't taken profit. I'm dumb. Now, listen, this is where it gets super hard because I'm not up quite as much as you. I got in a little bit later, but you know, I'm up 600%. And looking at it going, the next move just feels like it's up. I don't even, again, it correlates to my answer that I think we're early in the hype cycle. We're early in the hype cycle on the AI, and we haven't had our blow off top. I think we're going to much higher numbers in Bitcoin. So both of their business parts of their business model, I think, are working. So I get it, but I might, you know, I'll tell you, I watched my Bitfarms go up 500% and then ended up from that point, you know, down 80%. So I've taken this path once before with Bitfarms. Now it's back up to $3 again. It was at 68 cents. So I doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. I'm in the green big time on Bitfarms now, even though it's only at $3. But there's nobody, let's be honest, a month ago, there's nobody that thought Bitfarms was going to be at $3. That is incredible.
Tom, I want to talk about IREN. I want to see if Tom's going to be honest here, guys. Isn't it true that you were thinking about selling your IREN?
I was thinking about selling my IREN, and I actually put a stop loss in at $14.50 when it was at like 17 bucks. And I am so glad I did not get stopped out. I did about 48 hours of contemplation, and I said, you know what? I'm getting rid of that. This is just beginning.
But don't you think it was talking to the members and the people on the stream that helped convinced you more on IREN?
Yeah, we definitely had a long talk about that. In the middle of that week on the members only stream, we had a nice talk about IREN, and that's when I kind of changed. I changed my strategy twice. Yeah. I was going to sell it outright. And then, the members were like, well, why don't you just put a stop loss on it? That way you can participate in the upside if it happens. And I'm like, you know what? Why wouldn't I do that? And then the next week I was like, you know what? I'm not selling it at all. And that was at 17 bucks, and it's at $50 now. So
you would have missed all that.
I would have missed all of it. And because, it went from $6 to $17 in like 2 weeks. So I'm thinking, man, it's just greedy not to take that. That's like the biggest win ever. But almost every time I've ever done that, I look back and go, I did that with Apple way back.
Oh, you got out too early?
It was up. It had a run that was unbelievable for like 3 weeks. And I mean, this was in 07 or 08. And I said, I gotta take the profits on this one. And you just tell yourself, well, you're never going to kick yourself for taking profits, right? You won. But, Apple's 20x'd since then or whatever it's done. So I am kicking myself. I own no Apple. And I'm certainly not buying it now.
You want me to grab that, or you can grab it? It's in the back of my car. Okay. Says no. Love you. That's my daughter.
Ah, very nice.
I don't see her much. She's in college.
Old Jock saying, I must have bought and sold my IREN bags about 50 times. Love trading the volatility. Well, that's the other way to go. I mean, these are super volatile. And I know, as much as I went from 6 to 50, there's a lot of people that did double that because they played the volatility. But if you play it right, that's great. If you play it wrong, you might end up at 0. So, you gotta be Old Jock, I think, is a seasoned veteran trader. So he's able to do that. So I would just caution people. Swing trading, day trading is all walk before you run.
I wonder how many people are in the green now, Tom. Might be an interesting poll to do.
Let's do that poll next. And let's see where this one's at.
This has been brutal, and most retail's out of this space. I'm sure they're starting to get back in now, but they've been out of this space for years.
I almost feel like retail is still not yet even come back into this space, and they're going to chase it late. It may feel late right now based on the monumental up moves we've had, but when we look at the charts later, you're going to see there's still so much room to the upside. Just for most of these companies, they're not back to their 2024 highs. So they're much bigger, better companies by and large. They're now getting AI priced into them, and they're not even back to where they were in 2024. So to me, that's like we haven't even gotten to step one. This poll is very close. 42% think we're early. 40%, and now it's 41 to 41 that we're early or in the middle. That's 82% of you think we're either early or in the middle of the AI hype cycle. 19% think we're nearing the end. So there's your 80-20 rule right there. and I think as crazy as it sounds, I think we're early because when you see companies, right? When we get into hype cycles, I'm thinking of specifically the EV hype cycle, and there was some other things going on at that time. There was some stimulus. It was the perfect storm for small cap, high growth stocks. But these things, there were companies that had revenue zero, market cap revenue zero, prototype of my product doesn't even work yet, and they were 5 times the market cap of these companies. So, there's no guarantee that it's going to that place, but if this hype does what I think it's going to, these will go, and then they'll be unreasonably high, right? So it's very rare that a stock is trading perfectly at its value. So if it's under its value, I try and wait. My philosophy has always been at some point, the stock price and value will intersect. So I just try to wait for that point. And you know what? If you can ride the coattails along because you see that it's in the middle of a hype phase, then you can go way beyond that. So there's a lot of room. Most of these companies are still, under. I think every single one of these companies is under a $10 billion company except for IREN. And then it gets about cut in half after that. So, a $1 or $2 billion company can 10x and still only be a $20 billion company. And these are companies that have multiple real revenue streams. So, and are trading at like reasonable PEs. Yes, we're at 45 likes. If you guys can help us, smash the like button, hit the thumbs up. It is much appreciated. So let's do your poll, George. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to find out.
I think the group mostly agrees that we're somewhere between early and in the middle of this AI hype phase.
So tell me the qualifiers. Just stock or stock and cryptos?
Stock and crypto is
anything wherever you can make money in this investment world.
Try and word it that way so it's clear.
I got a crazy one as you're doing that, Tom. For some reason, I think Marathon next year at this time will be worth 20 billion.
Oh, I believe that. That's only
so
like a 3.5x.
Yep, I'm putting that on the ether just so you guys know. Not financial advice, but it doesn't make sense where Marathon is right now, and they're gonna have their run. 3.5x. So yeah, that's even it's lower than I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be points higher than that.
Think about this one though, Tom. We at one point in time, all the Bitcoin miners, and there was a lot of other miners listed, got down to, was it 3 billion?
Oh, it was less than that. All of them added up, put together.
I thought it was like 2 point something, but I said 3 billion because I knew that was a safe number.
Right. There was not a single Bitcoin miner that was even the mighty, what used to be the mighty Marathon. It has slipped. There's several that have passed it now in market cap, which makes very little sense to me. And we'll talk about more about market cap later. But there was no company that was even $1 billion market cap. A lot of these companies turned into nano cap stocks. But we'll go to a chart and take a look at just how much these have come up from the bottom, because it's staggering. Daniel, thank you very much for the super chat. Tell me what at price you guys will sell CleanSpark. So I always have to answer this in what's probably a frustratingly complicated way. It's not as much of an exact price target for me, and we'll look at the chart. I'll pull up the chart. So this is where CleanSpark is at. You can see CleanSpark was at, call it $18 in November of 2024. It's just a little under 16 right now. So that makes no sense to me because they had a very good 2025 from an operational standpoint. The company makes money. They've pivoted into AI and their stock. And you can see since they did that, right, they got rid of Brad and Matt, started talking about AI and they're up at from the top today. That's an 80% increase in, in a month. So there's no doubt. They said everything was amicable and everybody was on the same page, but the reality is I can only assume, and I don't know this, is that Matt wanted to lean into high performance computing data centers and Brad didn't, and we see what happened.
Tom, do you think this cycle is different for Bitcoin?
Absolutely. Which I know almost any time you think something's different from long-term trends, you're wrong. But in this instance, this is a still very new space. This is a nascent space. And we've had 3 cycles. This 4th one, a lot of different things are happening that have never happened before. And we'll go through some of those on today's stream because there's very specific reasons why I believe we have a lot of upside left. Things that haven't happened yet in this cycle that already happened in all the previous cycles. So I think we're pushed out at least a year. And I think the number is pushed out higher than it would have been. And I preliminarily, right in the middle of the crypto winter, I thought we'd get to $150,000. And I now think we're going to do somewhere between better than that and much better than that. Ultimately.
I think when you and I spoke about, I think we spoke about this, 6 months ago now, is that I anticipated the total crypto market at the end of this year to be between 8 and 11 trillion.
Yeah, and it's got to pull a double to get to the low end of that.
Yeah. I'll be in shock if it doesn't happen.
Well, and listen, there's the expectation out there, and sometimes it's bad that when everybody expects the same thing, but other times it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The 4th quarter has always been good. I'm going to show you a chart. It's a chart I don't believe in, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. 10 of the last 11 Octobers have been green. There's only been 1 red October in the last 11 years. So now that feels arbitrary to me because what's a month? It's arbitrary based on the Earth circling around the sun. So why any 1 month would do something different? But the fact is, sometimes that's because it's happened. That's the reason, right? It's that self-fulfilling prophecy model where Bitcoin goes up in October, period. Now, we broke the mold. Which I called in late August. I said, I think we're going to go up in September. I think we're going to have a really good September. And Bitcoin had a good September, and the Bitcoin miners knocked it out of the park in September. So I think a lot of people got out of the market and missed the whole thing because there was gloom and doom to the point of panic going into September. So I'm sure a lot of you stayed in.
I got nervous, but I stayed in.
I finally stopped buying the dip because now we're in a new territory where things are at a spot where it doesn't make sense anymore. But I had to, and now I'm glad, right? I complained about it. It was had to scrape up every last penny I could find under the couch to find some more money to buy the dip because we have 75 buy the dip opportunities. I mean, it was to the ridiculous, but if you had your conviction in the stock and you looked at the chart and you were patient, they're getting where I thought they were going, where I think a lot of us think they're going, and I don't think they're not there yet. So I'm going to finish this CleanSpark conversation. I'm going to put this poll up and then we'll finish our CleanSpark talk. So is your crypto-related portfolio in the green life to date? So life to date, whether that's the Bitcoin miners, whether it's treasury companies like MicroStrategy, whether it's the ETFs, or whether it's Bitcoin and altcoins itself, is everybody back in the green, or are some of us still trying to get back to green? This will definitely be an interesting one. So,
well, then we should ask, how many people that say no have watched and became members of Talking Investing?
Oh, that's a good one.
You know what I mean?
Because I'm pretty sure all of our members are very much in the green, and that's, you know, not no more credit to us than it is to the members. We have a phenomenal group of members. So, all right. So while that's going on, let's talk price target for CleanSpark. So I always look at these things in a couple of different ways. I do look at the technicals, but sometimes there's just a breakout and there's other factors. And even if things look overbought, they could continue to run significantly. You got to be careful. But I'm also looking at what Bitcoin is doing and how long I think Bitcoin is going to keep running. Investing. And then beyond that, I'm looking at where are we in the AI hype cycle. So you've got all these factors, right? If you think Bitcoin's topped out at 125,000 and we're at the end of the AI hype cycle, it's time to sell right now then. Now, I don't think either of those things are true. And I think there's several stocks that have lagged the market. Want to welcome to Talkin Investing. I don't know. It doesn't say a name. It's message retracted.
I think he got nervous. He's like, shit, George is on this channel. I don't want anything to do with them. Sorry. What happened? Go. Who cares? Keep going. How about CleanSpark?
So, you know, those are the series of questions you got to ask yourself. What's CleanSpark itself doing? So to me, CleanSpark has had an outstanding year operationally. They have officially pivoted to data centers and high performance computing, and, you know, touting themselves as an energy company. They talk about their 30 or 40, however many different data centers it is. And they have a lot of data centers across all of them in the United States, and growing. And they have a backlog of infrastructure that's going to be coming online, as do several of these Bitcoin miners. CleanSpark stock hasn't run nearly as much as a lot of the other stocks. So I think it's undervalued from that point of view as well. So I think Bitcoin still has its run, AI still has its run, and CleanSpark as an individual stock is lagging behind and has to do a catch up just to take those two runs. So I think there's 3 legs up for CleanSpark. But obviously my first target is get back to where we were in November at $18. But that is not, I think we were at $24 in March of 2024. Now, Bitcoin's much higher than it was in March of 2024. CleanSpark's double the size company it was in March of 2024. They are now 12 months into no at-the-market offerings, no stock dilution. They've gotten themselves a couple of lines of credit, and they're growing their business. So to me, it's all good things. So to me, this $25-ish number right here, I think is a super realistic price target. And that's 54% upside just to get back to where we were. Now, to get back to where CleanSpark was, and this isn't even really fair because they weren't even really a Bitcoin mining company, but in December of 2020 or January of 2021, CleanSpark was a $42 stock. Now, yes, they've diluted monumentally since then, but they've also gone from a half an exahash to 50 exahash. So that's 100x. And they certainly didn't dilute anywhere near that. So I do think this belongs up at bigger numbers. But I would, George has talked about we dollar cost average in. I will dollar cost average out. And probably starting at, 25, I'll start dollar cost averaging out, and it goes wherever it goes. The other thing I will do is if it's clear that the Bitcoin run is over and the AI hype bubble is getting ready to burst, even if we're not at $24, I'm just going to take what I can get. So that's why I say it's really hard. We don't know what the price of these are. This could just as easily hit 80 as it could 25. So stay tuned, I guess, is what I would say. But the point of that is either way, I think there's a lot of upside left. So not financial advice, obviously, but to me, I see a lot of upside left in CleanSpark. I think that CleanSpark and Marathon and Hive are the three that, I'm not saying they're the three best companies. I'm saying they're the three stocks that are lagging the furthest behind. So they have a lot of room to go just to make up for lost ground. Never mind the rush they should be having based on, Bitcoin's performance. So those would be my three that I think stand out. And again, I'm not dollar cost averaging in anymore. I've said this before. So, and ended up. Yes.
I've been quiet long enough.
Go.
I need to toot my horn. It was almost 3 months ago that we talked about this, and I'm hoping you have this article up. Yesterday, I was looking at this thing called X. And the CEO of a little company called Vanguard, I don't know if you ever heard of it, little company, manage a few $1 trillion, said...
I will segue right into an article. I do have that up, and you're the one that put it on my radar.
It said, I think it's time that Vanguard people need to get into this crypto space. So when you guys were making fun of me, when I said, what was his name? I forget his name, but he was the guy who started the ETFs.
Right, he was a crypto guy. We had a whole conversation. It's like, why are they not in...
Yep.
So to put this in perspective, and then I'll go to the article, Vanguard has $11 trillion, according to this article, $11 trillion under management, and they forbid their customers from buying the Bitcoin or Ethereum ETFs. So $0 of that $11 trillion is currently invested in the Bitcoin ETFs. So my point is, obviously, there's not going to be $11 trillion that rushes into it. But what if 1% of that money gravitates over into the crypto universe? That's $100 billion. So you put that much more demand in a space where, remember, we're creating very little supply. So that gets out of whack in a hurry. That one thing could be a big, and give me a second.
And I think that's going to be more like the 80-20 rule, by the way. I don't think it's going to be 1%. And I don't think Tom thinks it's going to be 1%. I think it's going to be more like 10 to 20%, which is unfathomable what type of pressure that's going to put into this market.
Right. And my point is, listen, if it's 1%, right? It's hard to argue that it's going to be less than 1%. Even that is going to be a gigantic catalyst. So you're right. If it's 5%, use your multiplier, etc.
Yeah.
So the article that I chose here, Vanguard U-turn on crypto ETFs could be explosive for Bitcoin. In the blink of an eye, 50 million Vanguard customers could soon be able to invest in the Bitcoin ETFs for the first time. And I just want to read a little bit of this. It could take me 1 minute. But it's worth reading. Vanguard is the world's second largest asset manager, and they're pretty much tied for the largest, currently handling about $11 trillion in funds. Everybody knows BlackRock's name for some reason. They're basically $11 trillion as well. And people tend to not know as much about Vanguard. But if you look at whatever your favorite stock is in your portfolio, it's a 50-50 chance that Vanguard is the largest owner in that stock. And if they're not, probably BlackRock is, unless it's an alternative stock that's a small cap, high growth stuff. But if you're in the S&P 500, BlackRock and Vanguard are the number 1 and 2 owners of almost every single member of the S&P 500. Anyway, it's a hugely influential company, given it decides which products can be invested in by millions of people around the world. But when the exchange-traded funds tracking Bitcoin spot price burst onto the scene in January of 2024, that's coming up on 2 years ago, the U.S. giant made clear it wasn't impressed. A detailed blog post was released that set out why these ETFs wouldn't be offered through its platform despite Bitcoin's healthy returns. So they literally have $11 trillion, and they're telling you got to believe inside of $11 trillion, there's some awfully high net worth people. And my initial knee jerk is always, they don't look, in general, as a general rule, they don't like to be told what they can and cannot do. So this never made sense to me. So they said a detailed blog post was released that set out why these ETFs wouldn't be offered. And so, quote from the blog, while crypto has been classified as a commodity, it's an immature asset class that has little history, no inherent economic value, no cash flow, and can create havoc within a portfolio. And then the person writing this article goes on to say, at this point, I would normally link you to that blog in question, but I can't. It appears to have been taken down from the company's website. So this is what's happening. They're going to try.
Oh, the plot thickens, Tom.
And according to Bloomberg, that's because a U-turn might be on the horizon. Vanguard is reportedly considering whether to enable its customers to start dabbling in Wall Street products that offer indirect exposure to the likes of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And it goes on and talks about how it's probably even going to have to adopt all of the other ETFs that are, I think, imminently coming out on other coins as well. So they missed this. They got it wrong. In my opinion, well, it's not really opinion. They got it wrong.
Fact. Yeah, they got it wrong.
Right. I mean, Bitcoin exploded and
we're missing another really important point about owning BTC or any of the other cryptos directly is they're tax-free right now from the Fed.
Yeah.
Tax-free. That means no tax. Zippo. And if you live in Florida, that means no tax, no tax.
So I got a good article that came out this week. They did a little clarification for corporations on taxes, and it's a really good one. So we'll get to that. Crypto golfer, at this point, if I still own Mara, I would just sell it and buy Bitcoin or IBIT. I think it's going to dramatically outperform those. So I understand that sentiment. At some point, everybody has their own tolerance level. At some point, you go, enough's enough. This stock's just not moving. But if you did that with Bitfarms 3 months ago, you would have sold it at 68 cents. And it's at $3 now. If I had gotten stopped out on IREN, it would have been at $14.50. And that was like 1 month ago. And now it's at $50. So I think I've been saying all year since the beginning of the year, I think these are going to get their turn. They're not all moving in unison, but the ones that deserve it, and maybe not every single one deserves it, but I believe Marathon is one of the ones that deserved it. They put out their monthly operational report, and if we take a look at that, Marathon announces Bitcoin production and mining operations update for September 2025. They actually mined more in September, despite the fairly large increase in the difficulty level. They mined more Bitcoin in September than they did in August. So that will likely put them back into, they've been in first place. They've mined the #1 amount of Bitcoin every single month for several years. 1 month, IREN jumped ahead of them. But I'm skeptical that IREN's going to be able to keep pace with 736. It's probably going to be 50 or 60 less than that. But I don't know. Time will tell. But 60 exahash. So that's the biggest. 736 Bitcoin, I believe that'll be the most in the month. And by the way, they're holding 52,850 Bitcoin. Their market cap, that's all their market cap is worth. This company's being priced at zero, at absolute zero right now. And so to me, this is a run waiting to happen. And I don't know when it's going to happen. That's why I buy them and hold them. Let's see what the people think. So is your crypto related portfolio in the green life to date? 84% are in the green. 16 are still working on trying to get there. I hope you guys are close for those who aren't there yet. And I hope you're at least feeling good. You must be a lot closer than you were 6 months ago and 12 months ago, because it's been a good run. So congratulations to everybody. I know several specific members that have doubled, tripled, quadrupled their money.
So somebody in the 16%, if you could be honest, just because other people have asked, did you guys not DCA in, or were you just out of powder? Like, meaning, did you not have any cash?
Right. Did you choose not to, or you couldn't?
Like, Mara screwed me up. That's why I'm such in a bad position in it right now. It's because I didn't have enough money and I didn't want to go into my margin account. But I am thinking about going into my margin account right now.
This is if it's to buy Marathon in particular, I happen to think that's very undervalued. But this is as a general rule, the market's at its the S&P's at its all-time high, at or near its all-time high. The Nasdaq's at or near its all-time high. Gold is at a historic all-time high. Bitcoin was $500 from its all-time high today. Right. Ordinarily, this would be an odd time to start going into your margin. But if it's stock specific like Marathon, you know, that's why everybody needs to have their own plan, make their own decisions. None of this is financial advice. Everybody's path is different, but hopefully it all ends up in the same place, which is making money. Sour Melon Gaming, thank you for the super chat, said end of the year targets, IREN $80, Marathon $25, Bitcoin $150,000. So I mean, there's nothing unreasonable about any of those three numbers, in my opinion.
He might be IMR.
I think you guys are going to be surprised. And I can tell you, I took a year of heat on Bitfarms, and people called me in every name in the book for holding on to Bitfarms. And not only did I hold, I bought at 70 cents. Big. And I'm glad I did, because now I'm deeply in the green on that. So, but there was a lot of reflection necessary, because that's a company that did have to change it. I like to say through some things that were within its control, and some things that were not. They were forced to dramatically change their business model. But I think they've gotten through that. And they've done it, and you know, this being priced out of existence, that Riot takeover was foolishness. I don't know what Jason was thinking. There was no chance of that ever happening. I said that from day one and every single day since. It made no sense. But what it did do was crush Bitfarms. So that's all over now. That's all in the rearview mirror. I'm going to do it this way, George. And this could turn into a round robin. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to put a tough one in there. Which stock is the best buy today? So I will tell you, I think Marathon, CleanSpark, and Hive are the best buys. This is not which is the best company, right? Those are two different questions. So I'm not asking you which is the best company, which is the best at what they're doing, which stock is going to perform the best between now and the end of the year. Marathon, CleanSpark, Hive, or IREN. Let's see what people think. And then we'll take the top two and we'll do a little round robin. What do you say? James, we have 3 of the miners' reports. I will go through them. We're looking at one of them right now, Marathon. Also, unless somebody did something in the last half hour of the day, I think RIOT and CleanSpark also put out their monthly operational report. So we will take a look at those. Marathon's the only one that mined more in September than they did in August. And I have a feeling that, those at the bottom of the list are going to continue to do that because they're continuing to add exahash rapidly. But the ones at the top of the list, I don't think they have a good chance of doing that because the difficulty level went up too much. We're going to talk about that. We're over a zettahash, which is 1,000 exahash on the global Bitcoin network. So the difficulty level is at an all-time high. I will tell you, for whatever reason, we're very early in the new block, but it's showing. I'm going to refresh this and show you what it's showing. So we're super early. These blocks take about 2 weeks. But early in this block, we're trending towards a 12% decrease in the difficulty level. It's taking 11 minutes and 35 seconds. It was taking like 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes, several block cycles in a row. So we increased. It seems like, at least in the short term, doesn't look like we're going to have another giant increase, and maybe we're going to have a pullback. We do have pullbacks. We've had big pullbacks before. I doubt we're going to have a 12% pullback, but I sure would not be surprised if we have a 5% pullback. Stuff happens. The United Arab Emirates just came out and said there are no Bitcoin mining on farmland, and there will be big penalties for anybody who breaks that rule. So that's a bunch of machines. I don't know how many exahash it is, but that's a bunch of machines that turn off. And you guys know you're not relocating those in a week. It's a very tight battle going on in this.
I picked CleanSpark.
You want to buy more Marathon, but you picked CleanSpark.
I just like CleanSpark.
Listen, those are my top 2. So I'm not going to argue with either one of them. And Hive's my third. And I think a bunch of these are still a buy. Now, everybody, obviously beware. I'm going to go to the charts right now and show you guys what these stocks have been doing lately. And at some point, we're bound to get a correction. And I just wouldn't panic because it's been so much all in the same direction for so long that we are well overdue for some kind of temporary reset. So I would watch out for that. I'm not going to panic in the event that happens. But let's just take a look. All right, this is this week. This is what Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners did this week. Bitcoin was up 12% this week. Almost all of the Bitcoin miners beat that. CIFR up 28%. They got some news and a deal. Hive up 26%. They didn't get any news. They're just so undervalued that I think they're going to just keep going at this clip. CleanSpark up 23%. IREN up 21%. And when you see how much IREN was already up, it's staggering that they still basically doubled what Bitcoin did this week. HUT up 21, BitDR up 20, Bitfarms up 19, Marathon up 17. So we did have 3 that underperformed Bitcoin. RIOT, TeraWulf, and Core Scientific. Core Scientific is almost, I'm thinking about taking it off the chart. At this point, it's CoreWeave has not finalized the purchase, but they are now basically just a proxy on CoreWeave stock. So CoreWeave actually did get some good news, but you can see it didn't have a giant effect. So I may take them off the list because I don't think they represent a Bitcoin miner anymore. And CoreWeave has no intention of using any of their Bitcoin mining infrastructure or equipment. So that will all be sold and gone. Just like Bit Digital did. In fact, let's just take a quick sidestep. For those of you still curious, Bit Digital, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. This is from their latest and greatest investor package. Step 1, convert Bitcoin into Ethereum to fully align treasury. So they sold all their Bitcoin and bought Ethereum. They went from around 20,000 Ethereum to 120,000 Ethereum. Now they had to sell all their Bitcoin and borrow a bunch of money to do that. That was step 1, complete. Step 2, simplify corporate structure by spinning off the high performance computing subsidiary. So they have, let's see what they have, White Fiber. So they're branding themselves as White Fiber. You can see data centers, cloud services. That's its own thing. Bit Digital is Ethereum. Bitcoin mining, but you're going to see that's going away. So step 3, which they're in the middle of, exit Bitcoin mining operations. So they're not mining Bitcoin anymore. They're shutting it down, getting rid of all their machines. That's in progress, which is going to lead to step 4, which is the final step, 100% ETH accumulation strategy. This will now be a treasury company for Ethereum. Now, they have 120,000 Ethereum. That, as far as I can tell, puts them in the top 5 of any publicly traded company, but desperately, desperately behind the top 2. The top one has, I think, 1.6 million Ethereum, and BTBT has 120,000 Ethereum. So, which is obviously is still a lot of Ethereum, but they're not going to be able to keep pace with those guys. So the same thing is true. So Bit Digital is not in Bitcoin mining anymore. Core Scientific's not in Bitcoin mining anymore. And that doesn't mean they're mining zero. They're going to leave those machines until they're going to leave those machines on. Their fleet keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller because more and more in their machines become unprofitable. And then when CoreWeave gets it, they've already said, we have no intention of doing any Bitcoin mining. I think there's 2 clear winners here. Might be able to move on to the next group. 2 clear winners, and it's not us, George, because we have 72 likes. Do us a favor, we're trying to get to 100 likes. It's much appreciated. It's free, and it helps the channel.
And it also helps the Buffalo Bills win, just so you guys know. I don't know if that's going to be good or bad.
I was going to say, that depends. Okay, so let's go through the rest of what's going on. This is what happened this week. So this was a spectacular week. We just ended the month. So the dreaded month of September, the month that was going to be awful because it's always bad and somehow that chart means something. This is like a home run. This is one of the best months for the Bitcoin miners ever. Bitcoin up 6%. So nothing wrong with that. That's I think the third best September Bitcoin's ever had. Every single one of these was up at least double that. Some of these were up, 15 times that. Bitfarms, to put in perspective, Bitcoin up 6%. Bitfarms up 110% just in the month of September. IREN up 77% in the month of September. And when you see how much they were already up, that's what's truly staggering. So they have lapped the field. They're so far, we're going to go year to date next. They're so far ahead of everybody else. But it's actually encouraging because we sit here with them multiples ahead of everybody else, and we still think they have more to the upside. So if they have more to the upside, what do some of these companies that are lagging have? And you can see Marathon in the month of September in last place. So again, I think it just hasn't had its run yet. So we want to go year to date, or should we put our next group up? Because I think clearly Cleanspark, Marathon. So 34% think Marathon has the most upside. 29 or I'm sorry, that CleanSpark has the most upside. So that's first place. Marathon's in second place at 29%. And then distantly, Hive is at 19%, and IREN is fluctuating between 17 and 18%. So those two didn't make it. I was surprised. People usually jump onto Hive, IREN, but it has run so much that I think people are kind of seeing a little bit of what I'm seeing is, there's just more room for catch up in Marathon and CleanSpark. So those two move on to the finals. Let's put another batch up. Make sure those are the right ones. All right. Oh. Okay. All right. So this group, you may not be as enthusiastic about. We'll see what happens. Which stock is the best buy today out of these four? Bitfarms, CIFR, which has been on fire, RIOT, which is actually having a very nice year. We're about to look at year to date, or BitDR. And I think BitDR, you're going to see, has lagged behind the field. They could be the best buy out of all of them. I know I didn't list them in my top three, and it's a smaller position for me than most of my other ones, but I do think they have an awful lot going on, and it's some good stuff. BTC to 150. Bills win the Super Bowl. Mark my words. Man, I hope you're right. Every Buffalo Bills fan for their life hopes you're right, because we're 0 for 4 and we haven't been there in 30 years. So, it hasn't not exactly been a good run for the Buffalo Bills. Anyway, we won't get sidetracked in football. I do want to show you this next chart because it's going to put BitDR a little bit into perspective. So year to date, now we looked at the week, it was fantastic. We looked at last month, it was fantastic. If we look at October, obviously that's just a part of this week. So October is fantastic so far, but we're only on day 3. So not a lot to take away from that yet. But year to date, IREN's up 414% year to date. That's almost double CIFR. CIFR would be spectacular because remember, Bitcoin's up 31% year to date. 12% of that was this week. So CIFR's up 217%. That is a dramatically better performance than Bitcoin. So, however, IREN's doing almost double that. Then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 here that are between 90 and 111% up on the year. And that is TeraWolf at 111, Bitfarms at 102, HUT, and by the way, well, I'll show you in a minute. Bitfarms at 102% up, HUT is up 96%. They have a complicated situation. They still are a Bitcoin play. They have a big hodl stack of Bitcoin, and they are the major shareholder in a new Bitcoin mining company, which was their old Bitcoin mining company, basically. Riot's up 90%. So, I mean, you can't complain. If you own Riot and Bitcoin's up 30% and Riot's up 90%, that's the 3x that I always kind of earmark. That's what these stocks should be doing. If we're going to be taking the risk to hold on to these stocks, if Bitcoin does well, this should be the reward. So we're finally starting to see that, because in 2024, we did not see that. 2023 was incredible. One of the best years ever for the Bitcoin miners. 2024 was bad. 2025 is looking, I mean, look at this. This looks very good. And I'm going to go to a specific chart because we called it on this chart. This was April 4th. So this was Friday. On our Tuesday live stream, we called the bottom, which we almost never, ever do because it's typically foolishness to try to pick a top or a bottom. But it was so blatantly obvious. Look at what the Bitcoin miners were doing about 100 days into the year. Bitcoin was down 10%. Cleanspark was an outlier. It was only down 21%. Cleanspark was in first place at that time. And then Riot down 30 all the way to BitDR down 63%. But you can see a big grouping plus or minus down 50% or more. That's where most of these stocks were 100 days into the year. So we went from every single one of these stocks being a disaster to 6 months later. This is the same chart 6 months later. Right? IREN's not negative 50 anymore. It's plus 400. Same with CIFR. Same with TeraWolf. Right? So these are dramatic. Now you'll see BitDR is the only one left in the red. So on that day when we put that chart up, I said, I believe, it was my opinion, every single one of these stocks would be green on the year. And most of these stocks would outperform Bitcoin on the year. And it certainly did not look like that because they were getting decimated by Bitcoin. Bitcoin down 10%. They were down on the average 50%. But we've turned this year around. I mean, you've got a bunch of these up near or over 100%, over 200%, over 400%. And we're not done because this is October and the fourth quarter is usually by far the best quarter for Bitcoin. Now, I very half-heartedly believe in statistics like that because they feel somewhat arbitrary to me. But historically, it is a fact. The fourth quarter has been the best. So we'll see if that holds. Marathon's only up 12% on the year, and BitDR's down 10% on the year. So that's why I say I think there's opportunity. Now, Core, like I said, they've been bought out. The deal just hasn't gone through yet. So, you know, you're just trying to play a little bit of arbitrage here. And I don't necessarily think they're worth being on the list anymore. But these two, and then Hive and CleanSpark. So those are my three that I think are undervalued. There's one that's worse than all three of them. So Marathon, Hive, and CleanSpark, I think are the most undervalued. BitDR, you could certainly make the argument because they have an awful lot going on and they're down 10% on the year. Now, they were down 63%. So remember, this is a big comeback from off of their lows, but they're still in the red, and I believe they'll end up in the green nicely by the end of the year. That company has a lot going on, and let's go take a look at a chart because they're jumping by leaps and bounds. So if I go, this is July, this is August. We now have three numbers from September. So Marathon did 705 in August. And you can see in July, just as an aside, IREN did 728 in July and Marathon did 703 after doing 900 the month before, or 2 months before, I think. Yeah, because it only went down 1%. So this one anomaly over the last 2 years stands out. IREN finished number one in the month of July. Marathon reclaimed that title in August. The difficulty level went way up, yet they mined more in September. So I do think they're pretty much a lock for number one in September. And we got the top three here. Oh, sorry, that does that. The top three are the three reports we got. So I'll just go through those real quickly, and then I want to talk about BitDR. So we saw Marathon. They mined 736, up from 705. I think they're going to be the only ones in the top half of the list that are up, not down. They have 52,850 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And I don't even think their market cap is worth what their Bitcoin is worth right now. If it is, it's plus or minus. So fleet uptime, 99%. I mean, it's not like these guys are doing, their cost is per coin is a little bit higher. Margins are getting squeezed, but they still make a lot of money every single coin versus their direct cost. And, you know, they're massively profitable as a company because Bitcoin continues to run, and they got 53,000 Bitcoin. So every time Bitcoin goes up, the value of that obviously correspondingly goes up, and nobody else has close to this. Riot is the second best, biggest total stat, and Cleanspark's the third biggest, so we can look at both of those. So you drop from 52,850. If we go to Riot, Riot mined 445 in September. Now that's down from 477 in August, but it's double down because, and this is why I think people are going to have a hard time beating August. The difficulty level went up too much. Not only did they mine less Bitcoin, but instead of getting $15 million in power credits on top of the 477 Bitcoin they mined in August, so August was a great month for them, they got less than $1 million in power credits. And, you know, 0.7 in power credits, 0.7 in demand response credits, so that's 1.4 million versus 16.1 million. So September was not quite the month that August was for Riot, but again, they've committed serious resources to data centers and high-performance computing, and so their stock's behaving very well. They've done so in a very vocal way, and there was an activist group that came in and pretty much pushed them, I don't want to say bullied them, but pushed them into this position, and it was the best thing that could have happened for them. They did two things. They said, forget Bitfarms, we're never going to buy Bitfarms, and we're building data centers now. Because they have 2 gigahertz of energy in the state of Texas. There's plenty of room for them to Bitcoin mine and host data centers. So that flipped, despite the fact their performance wasn't spectacular, their stock is doing well. And they have, so let's just compare hodls. They are in second place out of Bitcoin mining companies. There are a couple other treasury companies that are bigger than this. They hold 19,287, so still not, just under 20,000 Bitcoin. And then the other company that announced was Cleanspark. First sentence they say, Bitcoin treasury grows to over 13,000. So they now have just over 13,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. That's third place overall among the Bitcoin miners. And if we go down to their numbers, you'll see they mined 629 Bitcoin, and they're still sitting at 50 exahash. So both IREN and Cleanspark ran to 50 exahash, and since then, they've stayed there. Now, IREN has told us clearly their intention is to stay there indefinitely. That doesn't mean they're never going to add to it, but no more this year. Cleanspark has said they're going to go from 50 to 60 by the end of this year. So we'll see if they stick to that, because since they said that, they also have now said, we're pivoting, we're going to be doing data centers, we're going to be doing high performance computing. And you can see when they talk about here, together, the leadership team combined deep operational, technical, and financial expertise to guide growth at scale, digital asset management strategy. This is what I want to read. Strengthen financial flexibility to support hash rate growth and high performance computing expansion. So this is to my point. This is the first time ever this quarter right here, this month right here, that Cleanspark has said they're leaning into, they are embracing high performance computing. They have made it a point to brag about the fact that they're the only Bitcoin miner that's a 100% pure play, and they had nothing to do with it. Well, they've flipped that position, and I applaud them for flipping it because, in my opinion, it was a no-brainer, the right thing to do. And I was late to that party myself, so I'm not going to throw any stones in any direction. I'm glad they've switched. It's shown up instantly in their stock price. right? They went from $9 to $15 in a short period of time. But they also let you know, how are they going to do all this growth? Well, they have $650 million convertible note at 0% interest. They have a share buyback plan. So they're one of the companies, their share price was so ridiculous that they said, if no one else is going to buy it, we'll do a share. We'll borrow money and buy our own shares back. The price is so stupid. And honestly, I've been saying the same thing, and I was doing the same thing. I dollar cost averaged into CleanSpark, all the way. It was at $9 a month ago. So past that, they have $400 million of Bitcoin-backed lines of credit. 200 million of that came in this last week. So they just added another $200 million of capital into the mix that's totally non-dilutive, and it allows them to grow their business. So I really think CleanSpark, to me, it looks like, what else can they do right? Right. And then if you look at their joules per terahash, 16.07 joules per terahash, that's second only to IREN, who's at 15. And those two companies are way ahead of everybody else in efficiency. So it's just good news, good news, good news, good news, and good news, in my opinion. And I think their stock is finally starting to get rewarded. If we go to this chart, you'll see, like, this is what I'm talking about. I got a line here at $8.36. It was bouncing off of this line. I mean, this to me is a $20 or $30 stock, and it was bouncing off of this $8 to $10 range. So every time it hit this, I dollar cost averaged in here, I dollar cost averaged in here, and, we're not seeing to scale the run this has taken recently. Since their pivot, they're up 75%. In less than 1 month. That's a big move. But it still doesn't even leave them where they were back in November of 2024, a year ago. Less than a year ago. So
Tom, do you think having the government shut down is going to come into play at all with AI stocks or Bitcoin mining stocks?
So I was very worried about that in the days coming up to the shutdown. I want to read an article, and then I will answer that exact question.
Okay.
And I'll answer it first. I think the answer is going to be no, and I didn't know that until after it happened, and we've seen the reaction. So let me talk about it. No jobs report leaves the Fed flying blind. So the government shutting down does have some practical ramifications. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics is closed. They're closed. They sent everybody home. There will be no data until they can come to an agreement and open the government back up. So, no.
This is one of the reasons I don't think the government's going to open up before that meeting.
Right.
By the way.
But yet, with that, let's see if this is the article that talks about it. Traders are pricing in a 97% chance the Fed cuts rates by another 0.25% in the October meeting, even though we got no jobs report and we're likely going to get none of the inflation reports. So flying blind, the market is convinced the Fed's cutting rates, period. That's how convinced they are the Fed's cutting rates. They're going to go no data, and we're still at 97% that they're going to cut rates again. So that is a very high level of conviction. I think it's very likely. I have no idea. If the government shutdown ends, we're going to get all these numbers late, and better late than never. But right now, the market couldn't care less. And by the way, there's been... Let me find an article, because this is the trade from the government shutting down. I want to find this because it's important. 1 minute. Here we go. This is one of two articles I found. Okay, so Bitcoin could reach, this is JP Morgan, who's traditionally down on Bitcoin, right? I've shown 100 of their articles and 90 of them were negative. Bitcoin could reach 165,000 based on gold's record run. This from JP Morgan, of all people. Now, of all the price targets I'm going to show you, this is the lowest one. But it's still a significant jump from where we are right now. And this from JP Morgan. So, on a volatility adjusted basis relative to gold, JP Morgan estimates Bitcoin could rise about 40% to 165,000 from the current 119,000. And that's basically just to make up for the gap for what gold's already done. And the bank is saying, the bank says retail investors are driving the, quote, debasement trade. I can't tell you how many times I came across that word this week. And they essentially what they're saying is the dollar is getting debased, and so is every other currency on earth. And gold and Bitcoin are the winners, right? With the government shutting down, there was a flight to gold and Bitcoin, right? We just missed hitting our all-time high today. So whereas I did not know what the reaction would be to a government shutdown. Normally, the market likes to panic. So normally the reaction is panic. But that did not happen this time at all. Everything is doing fairly well, and gold and Bitcoin are off the charts. So I think that's no reason for that trend not to continue. So I think even with the government shutdown, I think we still keep running. The second place is so close on this one, but I got to call it so we can do the final round. So Bitfarms was number one by far, which is incredible because less than 1 month ago, we did this same round robin tournament and Bitfarms got 0%. So nobody wanted them at $1, and now people want them at $3. But that's how it goes. And oftentimes the momentum play is the right play. I see somebody saying Peter Schiff, same as Jamie Dimon. Those are two of the legendary Bitcoin haters, and Peter Schiff's a gold bug, and so he gets to be right now. Now there was 20 years where he wasn't right, but gold is blowing my mind. I must admit. Gold's going to hit $4,000 like imminently. I think it got over $3,900 today. That is absolutely incredible. Okay, so let's take the winners of these. So CIFR just beat out Riot. Oh, 22% to 21%. I'm ending it. And we're going to do, this is the winner's circle. So
I'm going to pick a different one just to mess with you.
All right, so these were the top two from each bracket. So this is the four that you guys liked the most. So out of these four, which you think were the best buys, which one's the best of the best? Let's see. We're at 101 likes. Thank you, everybody. If you haven't and you're willing to, if you could please smash the like button. It does help out the stream and the channel.
Are you looking for the best return for until the end of the year?
Yes. So again, this question is not which is the best company.
Right.
That's a totally different question. It's which stock is going to do the best between now and the end of the year. Which one's your bet? If you're going to invest your next dollar in the short term for the next 3 months, we got basically exactly 3 months of the year left. Where are you going to put it? So I'm just going to go to a couple of these because if you look, I got to refresh this. The ETFs this week, the Bitcoin ETF, 518 million positive on Monday, 429.9 million positive on Tuesday, 675 million positive on Wednesday, 627 million positive on Thursday, and today we pushed up against our all-time high. So I'm guessing we're going to have 5 out of 5 very big days, and that leads to an article I want to go to because something pretty amazing is going on here. I got a couple things we really got to get to. Tabs. Here. BlackRock's IBIT, so that is their Bitcoin ETF, enters the top 20 ETFs by asset, sees the biggest inflow since mid-August. So this is now out of the thousands of ETFs that are out there. And remember, some of them are on the S&P 500. They're on the NASDAQ. This fairly new, year-and-a-half-old ETF is in the top 20 of all ETFs. And more importantly, it's worth $90 billion. That's just BlackRock's. $90 billion. And remember, there's some other big ETFs. Fidelity, is about half that size. ARK has a big ETF. I think Bitwise has a big one. Let's see who the bigger. So IBIT, you can see they're the monster. That's BlackRock. That's Fidelity. And these are inflows, not asset values. The asset value is going to be higher because Bitcoin's gone up a lot. But you have 4 of these. This one's at inflow of $12 billion. Bitwise is at an inflow of $2.4 billion. ARK is at an inflow of $2.3 billion. I mean, this is crazy. These ETFs have taken off. And finally, the Ethereum ETFs are doing very well also. Not like this, but, Ethereum's not as big as Bitcoin. So it's the fastest growing ETF in the history of the world by a mile. And it is now one of the top 20 biggest ETFs. And the thing is, I'm reading a lot about Bitcoin versus gold. And gold is now, I think, $125 trillion market cap. And that's kind of the benchmark. This is where people think Bitcoin is going to compete as the decades go by. Not this year, not next year, but as the decades go by, this is digital gold. And that's the type of market cap that people have in mind in a 20 or 30 year window of time to rival gold. Now, I don't know that that's true. And gold just doubled in the last year and a half. I mean, it's one of the best gold runs ever. But putting it in perspective, the market has shifted. The Bitcoin ETFs, investors are all, let me get another.
And another country just found another humongous vein of gold. I don't know why gold is going nuts. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because the supply, gold is everywhere.
Right.
But it's been an unbelievable investment. Mr. Mount Hood Explorer said up 792% on IREN. Finally sold just 10%. Used it to buy more Canaan, which I want to talk about, which just went up 50% in about 3 days. So I want to go. Thank you for reminding me. This is a much smaller Bitcoin mining company, and they're also fundamentally, they make and sell Bitcoin miners. Well, they had some news this week. And guess what? It was good news. Canaan secures landmark U.S. order, strengthening market leadership amid U.S. Bitcoin mining recovery. Now, they would not name the customer. My guess is the customer wanted to remain anonymous, but they got an order for 50,000 of their latest and greatest Avalon A15 Pro mining machines. Those are 16.8 joules per terahash. They're a couple hundred terahash. I can't remember the exact number, but it's altogether, that's about 11x. That order was an 11 exahash order for Bitcoin miners. So in addition to mining Bitcoin, you know, they make the Bitcoin miners, and that's what they did first. So this was really good news. And on this news, I want to go to their chart because, I mean, they're up, and it's not a little bit. And you can see they actually were, so they pulled way back from their highs of the day, but from 2 weeks ago, not even a week and a half ago, they're up 82%, call it 80%. And in the middle of the day today, they were up 115%. That's in a week and a half. So that was a big announcement for them. It was big news. They got a giant jump. Their stock, as you can see, has been performing poorly. It's been bouncing off of this line of support forever. This is the 1-day chart. So it finally has taken off. And, you know, this doesn't really show the scale at which it's taken off. This is 115% up here at the top. So I hope you got in before that or in the middle of it. And you caught some of this run. And you're right. The thing is, there's a lot more room to go because just to get back to where it was, this was at $3.27 back in December. So it's at $1.31 right now. You know, that's more than a 2.5x just to get back to where it was. So that's entirely possible. $104 likes. All right. If you just joined us or if you haven't smashed the like button yet, please help us during this very good week for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners.
Cleanspark is pulling ahead. Look at that. That is the one I did pick, just so you know.
Well, you know what? This is the one. These are the two that won the members poll. The two that are currently in first place. So might have the same results here. Yeah, Cleanspark is just killing it. And Cleanspark, I want to remind everybody, Cleanspark recently...
Name two things that are done.
Name what?
No, Crypto Golf. We're having a conversation all by ourselves over here. Name two things that are dying. I'll go first. Fiat money and XRP.
Well, I hope not XRP because I got to tell you, I'm in XRP. So this is the 1 day for Bitcoin. So you can see a little bigger. We have recently, in November of 2024, we got to over 84 on the daily RSI, and we've been to nearly 90 on the daily RSI for Bitcoin. So, you know, where 70 is usually starting to be overbought, that's just not the case necessarily for Bitcoin when it starts to do its thing. It hits 85 or 90. Well, we're at 69.2 right now. So there's a lot of room left for this to run. We're not finishing at our highs of the day, but we did get up. We broke through this line. We did not quite retest our all-time high, But I think it's pretty reasonable to expect that we could over the weekend. And if we can break out of here and set this as a line of support, that's what we need to do to take the next run, up to some of these other numbers. And I want to show you some of these other numbers that people are predicting, because a lot of these people have not been big fans of Bitcoin, but they've changed their mind.
What would you pick out of the 4, Tom?
Out of these 4 stocks right here?
Yeah.
I mean, Marathon's 1 for me and CleanSpark's 2. So I got it in the reverse order of this. So I'm not going to argue with that chart. But I'll show you why I think for me, it's in the reverse order. Okay, so here, Bitcoin to 200,000 by the end of 2025. This cycle indicator points to explosive months ahead. On-chain valuation puts the key threshold at the trader's realized price of 116,000, and a multi-week break above that could set the stage for $200,000. Now, we've clearly broken out of this 116, and it's saying a price move above 116 is crucial for transitioning into a bull market phase with potential valuations between $160,000 and $200,000, and that's by the end of 2025. That's in the next 3 months. If this happens, I believe the Bitcoin mining stocks will be at numbers we haven't talked about, because this is a massive run between now and the end of the year. If we get to 200,000 by the end of 2025, I also would say beware, even if the run isn't over. If we run that far that fast, we're going to get one of our good old-fashioned 20 or 25% pullbacks after that, I would think. But
should I sell at that time?
Well, if this thing gets to 200,000 by the end of the year, this seems like a bold prediction. We'll end this and do one more.
200?
We'll do one more and see.
I don't like selling my Bitcoin anymore. Even though I did really well there for a minute, but it's just you're freaking on pins and needles.
Yeah, because you're counting on, if you miss it, you miss it.
Right, I know.
So the clear winner, the clear winner of our poll is that CleanSpark, 46% think CleanSpark has the most upside between now and the end of the year. Marathon came in a solid second place at 27%. Bitfarms in a distant third at 17%, and CIFR in last place at 10%. And those were the 4 that made the finals, so everything else was below that. So CleanSpark and Marathon, I've been keeping these lists, so we've been pretty consistent that we think those 2 are going to run. And if you look, CleanSpark is not back to where it was in November. It's nowhere near back to where it was in this cycle, right? $25 is a pretty reasonable short-term price target for CleanSpark. So there's a lot of upside there. But when I look at Marathon hasn't done anything. Marathon's at just under $19. It was at $30 in November. So, there's nice upside on both of these. And this is not by any means the end of the run, because remember, I'm not counting out. 57's not the all-time high. This was at $83 in November of 2021. I do believe this could get back to $83. I'm not saying I'm going to hold 100% of my Marathon until it gets to $83. Obviously, that is not true. But I certainly think it could get or beyond if they get a little more vocal about joining the high performance computing data center business, and if Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do. So let's just do a quick Okay, so we just saw somebody say Bitcoin 200,000 by the end of 2025. So I'm saying Bitcoin 200K by the end of 2025, by the end of 2026, or no, we're not getting there in this run. We're going to have to wait until the next run. Which one do we think? I will tell you, and it's winning by a mile right now. I think that 2026 that's a much more realistic price target for 2026. I will be very surprised, obviously thrilled, but very surprised if we get to 200,000 in the next 3 months. Wouldn't be unprecedented.
2026.
You think it'll take till the first quarter, so 2 more quarters.
Yep.
And that's, I got to believe everybody on here would be happy if by March 31st, 2026, Bitcoin was at $200,000. I feel like
what does that make the holdings worth for Marathon? 10 billion?
Oh, no, they have 52,000. Yeah. So
it's a little bit over 10 billion, right?
Try and do the exact, if I can remember the number. Yeah, it's about $10.5 billion of Bitcoin. And that's if they don't hodl anymore between now and the end of the year.
Right.
So they got their market cap significantly under that right now.
And says, I hear China's buying gold and it's why it's up for the most part. Thoughts? I can't believe they're buying gold.
China is buying gold. China is trying to become the gold capital of the universe. They have
it in the ground. Why wouldn't they just go mine the damn thing?
Well, they're mining it. They're buying it. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. They're also all in on their digital currency, their central digital currency, which I think is a non-starter. So maybe I'm underestimating, but I think with the Genius Act that was passed, the stablecoin market is going to be pegged to the dollar, until further notice. And that doesn't mean every single stablecoin, but the reality is there's 2 stablecoins, Tether and Circle, that make up 90 or 95% of the entire stablecoin universe. And those 2 are pegged to the dollar, and those 2 are just going to keep getting bigger. So I don't think you're ever going to see a significant stablecoin that's pegged to the Chinese crypto coin.
How is China still going strong, Tom?
I don't think they're going strong. They're still going.
I don't either.
I think they got. I mean, with the markets across the board at an all-time high, if we take a closer look, everybody's kind of teetering. Nobody's in a fantastic spot right now. But the good part is we haven't gotten to here in the United States, and this is why I think there's still big part of the run left. We haven't gotten to lowering interest rates. We just did our first 1/4 of a point this year, right? I think we did a 1/4 of a point last year. So we're 2 or 3 points behind the rest of the countries in the world. So we're about to enter a big phase of lowering interest rates and quantitative easing, which is going to be a monumental shift because this whole entire bull run has happened during a Federal Reserve governmental quantitative tightening phase. Bitcoin's never experienced one of those before during a bull market. So the quantitative easing is yet to come. And let me pull up an article because very important. All right, along the way, Citibank sees Bitcoin hitting 181,000 next year. So A lot of big forecasts. They're thinking 133 by the end of this year, 181 by the middle of next year. So there's a lot of optimism out there. Okay, so here. Altcoins set to surge, ? And you're going to go, where does this give anything to do with what you're talking about? Trump weighs $2,000 personal tariff windfall. What does that mean? President Trump is considering rebates of up to $2,000 for Americans funded by tariff revenue. This is checks in the mail. If you guys remember, after the C word in 2020, we moved into zero interest rates, quantitative easing, and we started sending people $600 checks. It was raining money, and it all, I don't want to say all, but a massive amount of it was going straight into the stock market and into cryptocurrencies. We're talking about potentially a $2,000 free money. I don't know how else to put this. It's a stimulus. So
you think that's going into crypto?
U.S. COVID stimulus checks were one of the key drivers for the 2020-2021 altcoin bull run. So I think the same thing's going to be true. You're going to get, and remember, when the altcoins run, that doesn't mean Bitcoin stops running. Bitcoin peaks with the altcoins. It's just that the altcoins run a lot faster because Bitcoin's way ahead of them at that point. So
when are they supposed to do this?
This is a very preliminary thing. So I don't know if, when, or if this.
The election's coming up in November. This needs to happen. So
Well,
now you're not buying votes or anything like that, but this needs to happen.
The potential rebates could increase investments in alternative cryptocurrencies. An analysis by a 2023 research paper indicates, and they go on to talk about this, but I think, forget research papers, it's common sense. If we go into lower interest rates, quantitative easing, and start sending out stimulus checks, it's going to be 2021 all over again. And, you know, that was the run in Bitcoin and the
Fish
altcoins.
Fish on!
Oh, Pogo's saying Bitcoin to 150 wants me to ask the group what they think Bitcoin will be at 9:31 a.m. Eastern time. I assume you mean Monday morning. I think we're going to be a new all-time high by Monday morning. Let's see what we're doing right now. So we're hanging out at 122,500. We'd have to go up $2,000 to get to a new all-time high. We were up most of the way there earlier today. So I think that's I think we could easily hit it over the weekend. Bitcoin new all-time high.
Do you want to do a round robin, or do you just want to talk about the Buffalo Bills?
I'm very worried about the Bills this week. This is a tricky game.
Did you see that they play them again in 3 weeks?
Yeah, well, I mean, that
doesn't make any sense.
I know that's very close in a row, and that one's on the road. So I'm just telling you, they got to win this week. It's a very important. It seems like it's not a big game, but it's a very big game for anybody who cares. If you don't care, that's fine too. All right, so Bitcoin to 200,000. Well, this is very interesting. 35% say we're going to get there in 2025. 46% say we're going to get there in 2026. Which means 81% of the people think we are going to get to 200,000 in this run. So that's a dramatic improvement from where we were a year ago and 2 years ago. It seems like 200 is starting to be the new number. And obviously, we've all heard higher numbers, much higher numbers, some numbers that I think are crazy time, but I'll be glad if they're right. I'm not holding my breath. But 200, I think, is now completely in play. And 81% think we will get there this year or next. And now 80%. So we'll end this on an 80-20, like everything else.
So I have one more question. Is 100 off the table?
Want to do one last quick?
Yeah, we got it. You're so funny, Sour.
So is 100,000 or below for Bitcoin never happening again? Are we past 100,000 and that's it?
I'm going no. I think it's still in range, but very unlikely.
It's a tricky question because I think the answer is no, but that's only, it's a 20% pullback. We see those. That's like standard operating procedure for Bitcoin. So I don't think if that happens, I don't think we can go, oh man, I'm shocked. How did that happen? 20% pullbacks. We had 5 of them last year.
Here, let me give you a new line from the Terminator that and it hurts me to even say it. Fuck your freedoms.
No,
no. That's what he said.
I know. I'm trying to forget that so that I don't have to never watch the Terminator movies again.
I can see it going sub 25.
No, that's trolling.
If you think that, you better buy BSV.
You think BlackRock's going to let their $90 billion ETF
never
crash worse than any ETF has ever crashed in the history of ETFs? I'm guessing.
If it goes sub 25, we all got serious problems.
Yeah, that's right. Probably nothing going to matter at that point. But I'm not predicting that. I don't even think it's get down to 100. But I'm just saying, nobody can pretend we're going to be shocked or stunned if it gets to 100. I just don't think it's going to get there. And 74% of you guys think it will not get there as well. So about 3/4 think we're never dipping back down to 100.
Yeah.
And we'll feel, and I think that number will go up if we do this same poll next Friday and we've had a breakout above the previous all-time high. I think that number is going to go way up. But we got a lot of room between now and then, and anything can happen. So any parting thoughts, George?
No, not really. I'm just, remember, you got to be in it to win it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to congratulate. First of all, thank you everybody for the super chats. Thanks for the showing up to the stream, and special thanks to all of our members who have stuck with us for so long. And I feel like hopefully all of you guys, this is all starting to pay off. This is what we've been talking about for years, and it's happening now. So let's enjoy it. Hopefully you guys can enjoy this. Have a great weekend. And for the members, we will see you guys on Tuesday after the market closes.
Hasta la vista, baby.